Welcome to Evolvepreneur podcast channel. My very special guest today is Brenden, who's the founder of MasterTalk, a YouTube channel he started to help the world master the art of public speaking and communication. He coaches purpose-driven entrepreneurs on how to master their message and share their ideas with the world. Got to say, welcome Brenden. I've got to say it's the shortest bio I've ever had, so there's congratulations on that one.
Well, it better be short. I mean, I'm the communication guy, so I better as well be concise, right? So thanks for having me, John.
Yeah, sometimes it's like War and Peace. I get these bios and I go, what am I going to cut out of it? Because it's all very interesting, but the trouble is that you end up in a situation where you get caught. Yeah, cool. All right, so obviously we're going to talk about stuff to do with public speaking and communication. And I noticed, so your only platform that you seem to be on is YouTube, right? So you've sort of single-purposed yourself on one place?
Oh, no, I'm on other things like Instagram and I'm on Clubhouse too, which is a new platform.
Yeah, me too.
But you're on Clubhouse too? Yeah, we should definitely connect to it. It's great.
Yeah.
But most of my content is housed on YouTube. You got it.
Right. Okay, cool. And so I guess how did you get into this game of public speaking? Because it's something that a lot of people like. The old rule is that most people would rather die than do public speaking, right? So as soon as they get the opportunity to stand in public, that's it, they're gone.
Yeah, and that was exactly my story. I grew up in Montreal, and in Montreal, you need to know how to speak French. So my parents looked at me and they said, buddy, you need to learn the language. And I just said, what? So they threw me into a French education system, which of course ended up being the best decision they ever made for me. But the process wasn't too fun. We're already scared of presentations as it is. I had to present in a language I didn't even know. So I would stand up in first or second grade, look at the crowd and go, bonjour. And that was my life for most of it.
Wow.
So I totally get where the fear comes from.
Mm.
But what happened was when I went to university, I started doing these things called case competition. Think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So all the guys my age were playing cricket, rugby, footy, or basketball. Not really my thing. I applied that same competitive spirit to presentations, and that's how I mastered communication. And I got a job in corporate America. And then I just said, okay, what do I do with my life now? And that's when I had the idea for MasterTalk, because I realized a lot of the communication knowledge was really bad on the platform.
Mm. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, and the reality is you can learn a few simple stuff that get you out of trouble, right? Because most of the time, I was watching something the other day. There's some people come on one of the talk shows, and she said, I think it was Taylor Swift or something like that, said, I still get nervous before I go on stage. And the reality is that obviously they've got a technique and a process to make sure that, at the end of the day, yeah, they might be nervous, but they get a result because, that's their job, right? At the end of the day, once you get on that stage, it's your job.
Of course.
So who's better public speaker, introverts or extroverts?
It really depends, but I would say that they both have their advantages and disadvantages. I think the best speakers are the people who understand which side of the coin they're on and get influenced by the other. So, for example, Gary Vaynerchuk and Seth Godin are both incredible speakers, but one of them's an introvert, another one's an extrovert, right? Simon Sinek and John Maxwell are both great leadership speakers, but Simon's an introvert and John Maxwell's an extrovert. So there's not really who's better. It's more about saying, understand which lane you're in, and then see what you can learn from the other. So in my case, I'm an extrovert. I love talking to people. So I'm on podcasts all the time, like yapping and running my mouth. But what I needed to learn from the extrovert was, how do I pause more effectively? How do I listen more attentively? But the introvert has the opposite problem. They know how to listen very well. They know how to pause very well, but they're not good at voice projection. They're not good at taking that extra risk because they're not used to doing that more in social settings. So we can all learn from each other, and the great speakers, the world-class ones, are the ones who learn from both.
Makes sense, yeah, because I think understanding the audience is the biggest part, right? Because an extrovert will sometimes just think, I'm just going to talk, and it's all about them, and it's all about the audience at the end of the day. It's not about them at all. They don't even matter. In some respects, it's the who's listening that matter, isn't it? Right?
Absolutely.
So, what's the biggest challenge with public speaking? Do you think, like when people, and I guess in some respects, public speaking's changed, right? Because once upon a time, not that many people did public speaking, and it wasn't really something that most people would do. But now with social media and all the other opportunities and stuff like that, it's changed dramatically. So it's almost like if you don't do some sort of speaking on video, ultimately you're never going to get seen or heard, right?
Absolutely. The way I think about this, John, is that public speaking and the challenge behind it has everything to do with lack of understanding of why somebody wants to master in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean by this, when we think about public speaking, the language around it, the stigma is negative. It's like doing chores.
Yep.
It's like doing the dishes, mowing the lawn. It's not really fun. And the reason is because we've been taught to believe that way. All the presentations we get in our life are mandatory. We wake up one morning, we don't say, hey, John, you want to get breakfast and present all day? It says nobody ever. Right? So the key is we need to start reframing this mindset. And the way that we reframe it is by asking this simple question. How would the world change if you were an exceptional communicator? If you were an exceptional communicator, how would the world be different? Start to describe that world. And if you describe it and you look at the answer, that's what will get you ahead.
So why, basically, not at the end of the day having some sort of reason for doing it rather than just doing it.
Absolutely. And that's what the best communicators have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think it becomes an art form, but nobody. So, do you think public speakers are born or made? Do you think they?
I think almost all of them are made. There's obviously going to be exceptions. It's the same thing with leadership. Are leaders born? No. Leaders aren't born. They're created over a series of experiences in their life. Right? They go through turbulence, struggles. They learn from other great leaders. They don't just get born out of the womb and just go, yeah, I'm a leader. What's up? Like, no, that's not how it works. I think public speaking works in the same way, in the sense that it's just most people don't know the framework, and I hope to teach that through the YouTube channel or through this conversation. But once you know the framework, it's like playing the piano. You get the first song right. The first song's always the hardest. And then when you know how to play that, even if you don't know anything else about the piano, you could still convince your friends that you're good, as long as you know that one song.
True.
And then they look at you and they go, Brenden, play another song. You're like, not today. Not today. Yeah. And they'll go, wow, he's so mysterious. So that's the key, right? Yeah. So I think public speaking works in the same way. If you know how to master one speech, that's a speech you give a lot, that'll give you the confidence to master everything else.
So I think one thing I see a lot of public speakers do in two ends of it, I had a client who wrote a book, and we actually did the book off the back of his public speaking, like his actual presentation. And I noticed that every time he did that presentation, it was the same presentation, almost to a point that I could do it for him, right?
Literally.
Because I heard the same presentation over and over and over again. And I remember, you probably aren't even young enough to remember this, was a guy called Dave Allen who was on TV, an Irish comedian in the UK and TV, and everybody used to watch it on ABC. And he eventually one day came to Australia and he actually did a show. And this is like 20 years-ish since he's exact same jokes. It was almost like, in some respects, it was like I was hoping to see something new, but the reality is he presented the same jokes in the same way. So he had this essentially a stage show, if you like, or whatever, but they're all exactly the same. So it's interesting to these guys because you get good at that, right? You get good at presenting that little bit of stuff that you need to get good at, and so the whole piano thing makes sense, right? That's why they repeat it, because if you start with a new fresh speech, you don't know what the audience is going to even react to, right?
Absolutely, man.
So, if you want to talk about this, like you talked about the framework and some ideas about what, people should do. So, is it that they need to get better at certain things? Is there sort of like 2 or 3 things they can do that will make a big difference? Like the old 80-20 rule, right? There's a couple of things you should do. If you do them, the rest probably don't matter as much.
Correct. There's one thing, actually. Right. If you do that one thing, you'll get 80% of the result. Okay. And it's called the puzzle method. Public speaking is like a jigsaw puzzle, John. Those toy puzzles you used to as a kid where you kind of put those pieces together? So if I asked you, let's say if you worked on this puzzle yourself, which pieces do you start with first and why?
Okay. Makes sense. I'm shocking at puzzles, by the way. So
no worries. I can help you out if you want.
Okay.
So the way that you do puzzles is you always start with the corner pieces first.
Yep.
Because the edge pieces are easier to find, right? Because they always have an edge to them.
Right. Well, yeah. If I was doing puzzles, I'd start and probably, so I've seen my missus do. She does puzzles all the time, and the first thing I see is building this frame around. Yeah. So,
exactly. Okay. Yeah, there you go. See, you know what you're talking about. you know this. You're just too humble to share your puzzle expertise with the group. But that's the point I want to drive. Is why don't we do that in public speaking? We have a classroom, a boardroom, a conference room presentation. So what do? We do the opposite. We start with the middle first. We shove a bunch of content. We get to the presentation. We ramble through the entire thing. We get to the last slide. It sounds something like this. Thanks. Probably like 95% of all the presentations I hear. But there's an easy way to fix this. Treat your presentations like a jigsaw puzzle. Start with the edges first. Practice your introduction 50 times. Not 3 times, not 5 times. Do it 50 times. It's actually not that hard. 50 seems like a big number, but it's actually a minute each. So it's like 50 minutes or like an hour if you take a break. Same thing with the conclusion. What's a great movie with a terrible ending? Last time I checked, terrible movie. Yep. Same thing.
And you remember the last couple of minutes, right? At the end of the day, because the rest is gone.
Exactly. 50 times the conclusion. In 2 hours of practice, John. Not 2 days, not 2 years, not 2 months, 2 hours. You look at your presentation, you go, I'm pretty good at this thing. I've done my introduction 50 times. I actually know what I'm talking about. Now, same thing with the conclusion. And with that newfound confidence, then you dive for the middle. But much like jigsaw puzzles, who does 2,000-piece puzzles on their own? Nobody I know. Get some friends, get a community, get people who want to master communication, join a Toastmasters club, and work on the public speaking puzzle together.
Right. Makes sense. Yep. Perfect. So with the intros, essentially intro and outro, right? So it's really what comes down to the whole podcasting thing, and the whole podcasting market is all about the intros and the outros, and probably that's the engaging bit. How do you get a good intro? Like what do you, is there an 80-20 rule on that perhaps, like in terms of what should be in that intro?
Yeah, I give a couple of suggestions on the channel, but there's a couple of ways you can do this, and it really depends on what idea you want to share with the world, if I'm being honest. Mm-hmm. Like if you're presenting a coaching service, your introduction should probably be a transformation story on how your coaching changed your own life, where you were, how your life changed. It's probably a personal story. But that's not true if you're presenting a research paper. Presenting a research paper, the beginning might not be a personal story. It might be a shocking statistic that you found in your studies. So it always goes back to this general idea. What is your key idea? And what is the best way of defending that key idea? And the person who knows the answer is always going to be the person who knows the key idea, which is yourself. So in my case, just to give a concrete example here, my key idea is always the same. Convince anybody that they can master public speaking. I believe that any human being can master communication if they understand the framework and they apply it. Mm-hmm. So how do I defend it? I use a personal story by telling you me. I mean, I started coaching executives when I was 22. I grew up in a French education system where I didn't even know the language, and I had anxiety my whole life when presenting in that language. If I could do it, why can't you? Mm-hmm. Right? So that's my, but that doesn't, right? Right, but that won't apply to you, right? So for you, it'll be a different idea and a different way of defending it.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah. So, why do people struggle with it, though, you think? Like, is it just because they're not, for example, I might think then what they're going to say is not important enough, right? So they don't have anything to say and they don't have anything to talk about. And it was interesting, I was just talking to a guy just before, and he talks in factoids. So it was always about telling, I'll give you a little fact, or a little thing. And I think that's probably the difference, is that they just haven't prepared enough, right? You haven't really got enough pre-prepared stuff, if you like, material that you can use, and that's why you feel like you don't have enough, right?
Absolutely. For me, it's the content. I rarely see lack of content in a presentation. I usually see either too much content or not enough technique. Mm-hmm. So in the example you gave, not enough content means that individual isn't stretching that content through pauses, through techniques, through changes in paces, or adding examples or analogies to bring up the content to the time that they need to speak it for.
Well, it's actually quite interesting because I got to eat my own dog food a couple of days ago. I did this presentation about author publishing, and it was a 2-hour presentation, and I ended up with, and we had this presentation that I used before, and that we'd had prepared, we hadn't really ever used it, and I went through it, and at the end of that presentation I realised it was too long, it was too much, and sort of critically looked at the end of it and thought, this is if I'm going to do this again, I'm going to change this. I'm going to cut out half of this, at least, because it was too much information that they would have never got anyway, right? And you forget. It's very easy to overcomplicate it and put too much into something, thinking that the more you give, the better that you're going to be off, right? It's actually less is more.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's the thing with a lot of the things that I've done a lot of research in courses and things like that, and the biggest reason why people leave courses is overwhelm. So it's not like you haven't given them enough stuff, it's actually you've overwhelmed them with too much. And I think one of my clients did a TED Talk, a couple of TED Talks actually, and he had to rehearse it until he got it right, and you've only got, 15 minutes or something
18,
to get it done. And it's interesting how I watched that morph into something completely different than it started with, because you've got to get very clear. And so I think the thing is, it's the old story. If you had more time, you would have written a shorter letter. And I think that's kind of what happens with that sort of thing. Is that the more time you're given, the worse it gets. I think you've got to remember that, I should have built more time into it, but it just, it comes up on you quick. So lack of preparation maybe. But at the end of the day, it's like you didn't get the core message out, and I think that's where you fail the audience.
I completely agree.
Mm-hmm. So, how's the channel going in terms of what you're doing with that? Because I see you've got about 6,000 subscribers, so that's not a bad start for a YouTube channel to get that subscriber base. Is there stuff that they like? Let's say you're doing that kind of social media stuff. So you're doing presentations in a public speaking event, but when you're doing social media, and you're doing, and particularly in YouTube, from my understanding, is that there's an art form just in that, because if you have a really long thing on YouTube, I think I'm looking at there's 4 minutes or something like that, so a lot of your videos look pretty short. And I sort of started watching one of them. So what do you think's the thing, let's say for YouTube, particularly the YouTube, Facebook, which you've got very little time, right, to get that audience engaged to listen to you?
Yeah, the trick is very simple. You got to write out the whole thing.
Right, yeah.
That's it. You got to write out the whole thing. Like me, I actually write out my content 3 years in advance. That's why all my videos are concise, because I'm not rushing for the next deadline. Right, so I just finished 2023. I haven't recorded until then, but all the content's written out. So that way, I'm always looking at my scripts to make sure I'm saying as less as possible with the maximum amount of impact. Mm-hmm. And that's why when somebody watches a video or sees me on a podcast, I just get straight to the point. I just give you the nugget. So that's what YouTube does for you. It helps you practice how to be direct, especially if you want to grow.
Mm. Okay, makes sense. Yeah, because it's quite well done. Like you presented an issue, and then sort of introduce yourself on the way through. So you're sort of like starting their engagement, getting them started, and then feed them in from there. Because I think that's the trick with a lot of people. People get on and do 1 hour, videos or whatever. And it's like no one lasts that long anyway, usually, unless it's very good. Yeah. So what's the so you're only young now, right? So how old are you now? Like you
24 now.
24. Okay, so you're a young pup. So what's your goal now? Like you got, particularly obviously you got the art of communication, which is a big skill set to have at the end of the day. What's your goal now for the next, say, 10 years or something like that? What are you planning on doing?
Yeah, for sure. The goal is to finish what Dale Carnegie started.
Right.
So Dale's the author of the book How to Win Friends and Influence People that you probably know of. And what's unfortunate about his narrative is he didn't have the mediums of technology to teach public speaking in the best way, which was podcasting and YouTube videos, right? Because you want to see someone on a video actually doing it. And it's sad, it sucks that Dale didn't have access to that technology, or I'm sure he would have had that YouTube channel. So I see it as a moral responsibility for me to pass on that knowledge. And because I just happened to be born in this time period where my videos can live forever. So that's what my legacy is pretty much, is to how do I answer every possible question on public speaking so that when I'm dead, people can learn from me forever.
Wow, that's interesting. So you're leaving a legacy, and I think that's the two things that people weren't able to do, as you say, like, before, to get published as a book, a book is a big job. I mean, we do, self-publishing and help people self-publish, and the reality is that probably, less than 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you wouldn't be able to do that. And so the ability to kind of leave that legacy forever is amazing. And I think, it's a great thing to kind of think about, is how can you help someone else? And in 100 years' time, they might be analysing, things in your screen that you probably didn't think about. That's like, what's that? I mean, I saw an ad on TV a while back now where they were looking at the dial phones where you dial a number on the phones, and I mean, I had that when I was a kid. So it's like, what the hell is this thing? What is this actually supposed to do? How are you supposed to dial a number? Because no one's used to that kind of thing, dialing. So I think those things are interesting in 100 years' time is what people will think of what you're saying now. So I guess there is a big tip that you can give someone in public speaking, because one of the things you said was prepare your content in advance, and that's quite amazing you've done that far out. But I guess the reality is they're only short videos anyway, so the chances you essentially could do a lot of them in one day. So do you think lighting, and like obviously in video, lighting, audio, well, that's important? Or what's the most important part of that process, do you think?
I think the most important thing is posting every week.
Mm-hmm.
My first year on YouTube, actually, John, and you can go check, I guess, the old ones after. I literally did on my mother's couch, didn't edit a single video, had no budget, no lighting, literally had a phone. I was a broke student.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have an executive coaching practice back then. I just had an idea. And for the first year, I just practiced with that phone. And then I eventually, 6 months in, I got a DSLR, like a camera.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, never edited anything. But then over time, I got really good on camera, and then I went professional. Then I put some real money into the channel, and I got a production team together. But that's not what happened at the beginning. You know, it's just me and a phone. I think what most thought leaders need to start thinking about is how do I produce consistent content that adds value? Because not only will it help you service your clients better, it'll help you communicate ideas better as well, and then could hopefully make you that thought leader that you're meant to become. Yeah,
because I think the thing is, it's a bit like anything else. Like, you got to start from zero. You got to start from 0 subscribers. You got to start. Everybody starts from 0. It depends how fast you get there, but at the end of the day, you got to start from 0, and then not be too worried about the tech. Because I see a lot of that when people go, "Oh, what sort of camera should I buy? What sort of microphone should I buy?" And they're all just reasons for not doing it.
Exactly.
It's just putting things off, because then you can stuff things up further. So I think you're right. Just start now. And the reality is, particularly with this stuff nowadays, you can always delete it, right? If it was really bad back then, you could always say, "Oh, when's going to delete that?" But at the end of the day, you've got control of what happens there. And it was interesting talking about Clubhouse. Actually, is probably the last thing we'll probably wrap up on, because of something that's very interesting on that audio environment. Is that one thing they said something about is you can't hear anybody smile, right? And Clubhouse is an interesting platform because you can't gauge the audience. You don't really know what's going on except the amount of people that are there. So it's totally audio based. And it's amazing how those engaging conversations come out of that audio, which really has made me think more about how important audio is out of a video. And the fact that the audio, like I said to a lot of people, you can have bad video and good audio and you'll get away with it. But if you've got bad audio and a good video, you'll lose. People will turn off. That's it. You're gone. And I think that whole Clubhouse experience in terms of what they're doing is quite amazing. And I can see it sort of changing along the way, but it was I've probably been on it about a couple of weeks now, and you could probably easily get addicted to the thing. So what have you been doing on it? Have you started doing some audio stuff, or are you just playing around yet? Or
Oh yeah, I'm obsessed with Clubhouse. I'm on it 16 hours a day, if I'm being honest. Like literally, I literally just do podcast interviews and I just go back on Clubhouse. I'm moderating a room right now, so after I'm done here, I'm just gonna go back to that. Yeah, I think Clubhouse is a huge opportunity, especially for thought leaders who haven't made it yet, who have real expertise that the world doesn't know yet. Clubhouse is the platform for them. It's incredible. I've been grinding out MasterTalk for 2 years now. I'm going up on 2 years on YouTube. It's 6,100 subs. I already have 1,200 on Clubhouse, and it's been 3 weeks. Yeah. No, it's been 2 weeks. Wow. Right. So I'm growing really fast on Clubhouse. So because I have real expertise, right, in my domain, but because I'm young, nobody knows who I am. Right. So that's why Clubhouse is amazing, because I could start a room, get 50. We had a room a couple of days ago, 300 people were moderating, but because we have real expertise. The opposite is also true though. That's what I love about Clubhouse is you can't hide anymore. You can't curate fancy videos. If somebody asks you a question and you don't know the answer, it's like me. Let's say you asked me a question, I don't know the answer, then I'm not an expert in communication. People will know right away. Yeah. But if you're really good at what you do, Clubhouse is game changer. It's amazing. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, actually, I saw someone post on Facebook the other day that he distracted himself so much on Clubhouse that he actually had to delete his account. Like he's
Oh yeah,
his business.
I'm
I think he
addicted.
mistake. Like I think that's a mistake. I think what happened was he should have worked out a way to integrate it into his business, not take it out of it. It's almost like a gut reaction, isn't it? Like it's bad. I'll take it out.
It's yeah, I'm addicted. I'm not going to lie.
Mm.
It's a very addicting platform, but it's got it's huge opportunity. It's incredible. The people I've met, like just to give you an idea for people, 2 days ago, we were moderating a room with a shark. Like we were like with what's his name? What's the guy's name? It's
There's Kevin
I,
Harrington I know of, and there's another
yeah,
guy.
yeah, it's
I
another
call the
one.
shark or something, isn't he? Because he actually calls himself the shark or something.
No, the people shark. The people shark. What's his name
Yeah.
again?
Oh no,
Damon John. Damon John.
that's
Damon
it.
John.
Okay, yeah. But
Yeah, so
I don't see
he
the
just
show.
joined our room. He
Yeah.
joined our room and just started moderating. And then the room blew up. You're just like,
Yeah, Grant Cardone showed up. He's pretty big on there. There's
yeah,
a
it's
guy
crazy.
there, Dan Filsim or something like that. He's like a
Yep.
value investor. He must never sleep because when I
Yeah,
see,
the guy doesn't. He was up
yeah,
until like 2 a.m. yesterday Eastern,
yeah,
like crazy. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I was on it until like 1. He was still up there. But anyways, long story short, to not bore your audience here, if you're not on Clubhouse and you want to be a thought leader and nobody knows who you are missing out. I am telling you.
And the really nice thing about it is that because it's not recorded, the reality is no matter what you say, if you screw it up, it doesn't really matter because no one will
Exactly.
ever remember it outside the people who heard you, and they're not going to remember anyway, probably. So, end of the day, it's a great platform to practice, public speaking in some respects.
I'm with you.
Cool. All right. So much. Thank you so much for your time. I know that you got to get back to Clubhouse.
Yeah.
We can't have that. And also, we've got to make sure we keep this tight because obviously part of the communication thing was like you can't have a long podcast with a person on communication, can you?
Of
So
course.
really appreciate. So a bit of shameless promotion. If someone wants to learn more from you, and I'm sure they would want to, what's the best way to get in touch with you outside the YouTube channel? Is there an easy place to go?
Definitely the YouTube channel is the best, John. All you got to do is MasterTalk in one word, and you'll find me right there.
Hmm.
And yeah, and then if you want to contact me other ways, all my contact info is on the YouTube channel.
Okay, excellent. No worries. All right, we'll put up the links anyway, and we'll do it then there. So thank you
Sounds
so
good.
much for coming. It's a very insightful and it's some great tips, and I think people should have a re-listen to this couple of things and just there's little nuggets in there that work really well. So thank you again, Brendan, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, John.